Thank you, Ben. Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to the First Parish in Framingham. I am Elizabeth Kavanaugh Murphy. I use she, her pronouns, and I am honored to serve as your ministerial intern. First Parish in Framingham is a welcoming congregation. We celebrate and welcome people of all sexual orientations, races, ages, gender identities, abilities, socioeconomic statuses, or beliefs. We welcome you if you are joining us in the meeting house or on Zoom, or if you're watching this service after the fact. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, you and your unique story are welcome here. Unitarian Universalism is a faith that focuses on how we act in the world and what we do in this life, not what stories we believe in. I draw your attention to the announcements in the order of service. Immediately following worship, you are invited to join us for coffee hour in Scott Hall, right across the courtyard. And I do have an add-on announcement that should you need it or want it, we now have streaming of the service on Zoom available in the nursery across the way as well. Two more announcements that didn't make it in. There will be a small reception in Faith Waters' memory on April 16th, and we're requesting that people RSVP if they plan to attend. So please check your email and respond accordingly. We did send something out on Friday. While we won't be hearing a testimonial today, the Canvas team is still hard at work and asking that you consider a 10% increase or more if possible in your annual pledge. Please see Sarah Middleman at the piano in Scott Hall during coffee hour to fill out your pledge card. For the safety and comfort of all, please remember to keep your mask on when you're in a First Parish building, unless you are eating or drinking. Please also turn your cell phones or other devices to their quietest setting. However, we do love the sound of a child cooing or your laughter or even your clapping. We love to hear your singing as well. Since 1701, people have gathered as this community, sharing stories, seeking peace, and seeking meaning. Those people are like you. You belong here maybe for the next hour, but hopefully for longer. You belong here, and we are happy to have you with us. I now invite you to take a deep breath in and out. Continue to take a few more deep breaths over the next few moments. Begin to let go of what you need to let go of to be more fully present here for yourself, for those around you, and the sacred of this time and place. And now, please rise in body or spirit, whichever is best for you, and join us in singing hymn number 1007, There's a River Flowing in My Soul. This is an easy one to pay attention and sing along to, and if you need it, it is in the teal hymnal. We're mixing it up a little today. Yeah. You may be seated. A flame within a chalice is a primary symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith tradition, to symbolize the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. Our story includes beginning worship by kindling the flame of our chalice. And to do so this morning, I use the words of our friend Lee Kinvey. This is called A True Story. This chalice is for the living, the changing, the becoming. This chalice is for losing the script of your life, the chapters about who you are in other people's stories. This chalice is for the lost GPS that was supposed to show you how to get where they expected you to go. This chalice is for skipping the directions, coloring outside the lines, painting not by number, but by silence, by wild abandon with a brush you made yourself from light deep inside. Startling, vivid, a new voice that already knows you. Finally, a true story.
On. Hi, I'm Lauren Strauss. I'm the Director of Religious Exploration here at First Parish in Framingham, and I use she, her pronouns, and this story is one and everything. If you could back up a slide, that would be super handy. Back up a slide, please. Okay, maybe not. One and Everything by Sam Winston. Oh, there you go. You can see the illustrations right up here in the front. And I have some help with this reading. Once, there were many stories for the world. Some had beautiful sunsets. Others lived at the bottom of the sea, while others were simply full of dogs. There we go. Those are the dogs. But there was one story that decided it was going to be, that perhaps it already was, the most important story in the world. When this story approached another older story, instead of listening to it, this bold story said,
"Actually, I am the one, the only story."
And it ate the older story up in one gulp. The one got very excited. Soon it came upon more stories, one with fairies, one with dinosaurs, and a really nice one with a funny song in it.
"I am the only story,"
it said. And with a giant slurp, all the others went down into its belly. Before long, the one and only story was nearly the last story in the world. In fact, this storybook I am reading to you right now was probably the only other story left.
"Hey,"
said the one,
"I am the only story."
It was very dark inside the one. So dark, it was hard to tell if there were any pieces of the other stories left at all. But inside the one's belly, something was happening. A few letters got together, then words. Soon there began to be whispers, and then a voice spoke out loud. "One," it said,
Can we ask you something?
Of course.
said the one.
If you have eaten all the stories in the world, does that mean that somewhere in your belly you have the magic O-1 words?
Of course.
Said the one, thinking, whatever those are.
Do you have every Adlam letter?
Oh, indeed.
Said the one, feeling a little nervous.
So actually, does that mean you have every word for every story ever told in you?
Why, yes, I do.
Said the one, proudly this time. Well, said the voice,
It seems to me that you're not the one story then. You're every story.
there was a long pause.
Oh,
Said the one,
I suppose I am.
and with that, the one exploded into every story imaginable. And all that was left was a question. Maybe you can answer it. What will our next story be?
So now, I invite you to rise in body or spirit to sing the unison affirmation. So before I say love, I am inviting us to consider the unison affirmation slightly differently. You'll say the same words, kind of, but I would like the left side, this side right here, to say the words that are in the regular type, and the right side over here to read what is in italics. And I invite you to turn and face the center aisle and to look and to listen as we say these words. Elizabeth, if you want to start folks out. So when Elizabeth is reading, and if you're on this side, please read, and I will read what's on this side.
Love is the doctrine of this church,
The quest of truth is its sacrament.
and service is its prayer.
Dwell together in peace,
To seek knowledge in freedom,
to serve all life with compassion,
to the end that all souls shall grow.
harmony with the divine. This is our great
covenant.
one with another and with our God. You may be seated.
So the first story that we tell today, you're going to tell. Has anybody ever heard of a story? It's kind of obscure, probably not, but has anybody ever heard the story of Adam and Eve? No? Well, Dean's no help then. Okay. I'd love each of you who knows that story to raise a hand, and I will come and hand you the microphone, and you can tell me one sentence of what happened in that story. All right.
If you can say this in church, Eve screwed everything up.
All right. Sure, why not?
Eve eats the forbidden fruit.
Anybody else have a piece of that story to add?
The serpent was the one who suggested that Eve should taste that forbidden fruit.
The serpent suggested to Eve, that fruit might be yummy.
Eve gave us knowledge.
Oh, Eve gave us knowledge. All right, I'll come right back to you.
Adam was alone in the Garden Eden, and God gave him a partner.
Oh, we backed up a little. Good.
Now I don't know if I should start from the beginning. Adam was alone, and so God took one of his ribs and made woman.
God took one of his ribs and made woman.
The serpent was the devil.
The serpent was the devil.
Because they got knowledge, they were thrown out of the garden.
Because they had knowledge, they were thrown out.
The tree was the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
The tree was the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
The humans ruled the world and had dominion over all the animals.
That is part of the story. Anybody else have a bit? Or do we think we have it pretty well covered? Oh.
They were naked and unashamed.
They were naked and unashamed. Yep. Woo-hoo.
But once Eve ate the apple, they realized they were naked, and then they were ashamed and had to cover up.
Whoa. All that nudity. Anybody else, or have we got it pretty well covered? Pam, your way on the other side.
I don't know my Bible, but didn't God create man and woman? He created people, man and woman at the same time, so I don't know what Adam was doing alone in the garden to begin with.
Yes and no. Because there's two stories in there about how things got created. Yeah. I think Eve was born of Adam's rib. Yeah, in the Adam and Eve story, many people translate that particular Hebrew word as rib. And others say side. It's a little different. All right. Good. I think we're all set. Thank you very much for helping me tell this tale. And I don't know what we're doing next. Oh, yeah. Yep.
I'm the Reverend Aaron Stockwell Wiseman. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm the senior minister of this congregation. And I think one of our mics needs to be It's the Madonna mic that you have. The power just needs to be shut off. In our community, there is great joy and there is also great sorrow. We set aside this time because we know that joy shared is joy expanded, and sorrow shared can feel as though someone is lifting a burden. We set aside this time to tell a little bit about our life stories. As a reminder, you can write down your joys or sorrows in the book at the back of the sanctuary, or you can submit them each week online. We intersperse into our sharing the singing of Comfort Me. We sing so that the joys and sorrows are held, and also so that you might have a song to sing when you need comforting. I begin with this sorrow from Jan M., who shares, thinking of Tracy Marshall and her daughter Haley, who lost their husband and father, Alberto Santoflorentina, this week after a brave and prolonged battle with cancer. sending love. Let us now each sing the first verse, Comfort Me. Share this joy from Greg W. It was a joy seeing the daffodils this morning. A joy from Diane B., who writes, "Thanks, Ben Long, for sharing so much of his music and himself with us." Share this joy from Marianne O., who writes, "Recovering from a surgery that was more serious than predicted, and happy to be feeling like myself again." This joy from Neil E. "The life of my cat, Garfello, came to a peaceful end." And this also personal joy from Marianne O. "That despite his name, a man who has been accused of breaking a law is going to trial." Let us now sing the second verse, Sing With Me. And as always, we light one final candle for all of the joys and all of the sorrows which are deeply felt, yet remain unspoken. We'll now sing, Speak for Me. We now move into a time of further contemplation, meditation, and prayer. There are some gestures that I will invite you to do. Feel free to join along as you wish, or you can sit in the stillness of this space. Spirit of life and love, named and unnamed, but who calls us each beloved, we come to this gathering with gratitude as we hold our hands open and facing the sky. We give thanks for all that we have, all of the talent shared here, the lives of friends, family, who might be human or animal. We give thanks. We now move into sorrow, placing our hands on our heart. We especially lift up Alberto's death, and may we each find ways to reach out and comfort all those who mourn, all those who are ill. Now, a gesture for all the sorrows in the world, keep one hand on your heart and reach out with the other. This week, I recall the terror of gun violence, especially in Tennessee. Earlier this week, 3 students, 3 staff, and the shooter dead. Terror, too, from gun violence, swatting calls, police called to high schools all across our state. Students enduring trauma, may we find ways to work to bend the arc of the universe towards justice. May we also find ways to affirm the basic right of expression and gender euphoria of all those transgender people, loved ones of ours, being legislated against. And now, in a gesture of humility, holding both of our hands together, we know too that we are human, and as humans we make mistakes, we fumble with our words. Our imperfections sometimes show a little bit too much. Because we are breathing, because we are still alive, there is always a chance to move back into right relationship with others and with ourselves by saying, I'm sorry. And now, releasing our hands, may we each sit in the quiet of this house, of this community, so that we might pray the prayers of our own hearts, simply rest, or listen. I will keep track of the time. May it be so.
And now we ask the question, what is the story they told? How does it line up with what we just told? And I will share chapters 1 and 2 from the book of Genesis. This is the Children's Bible version. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Where there had been nothing, now there was something, unformed and empty, spinning in the darkness. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. God divided the light from the darkness and called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was evening and there was morning, and that made one whole day, the first day. And God separated the waters of the earth from the waters of the sky, and he made the heavens. There was evening and there was morning, and that was the second day. And God made the earth, and he gathered the water into seas, and he told the dry new land to bring forth grass and trees, fruit and seeds. The third day. And God made the stars to guide the way and to show the seasons, to give light to the earth. Then he made the sun to rule over the day and the moon to rule over the night. There was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. Then God said, "Let the waters swarm with life and the heavens fill with life." He made the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky. There was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. And God made all the animals of the earth, and he created man in his own image to rule over the fish and the fowl and every living thing. There was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. The heavens and the earth were finished, and all of God's creations were done, ready to spin into the world we know. God saw that it was good. And the seventh day was blessed by God, for on that day he rested from the work he had done. After he had formed man and breathed life into him, God planted a beautiful garden in Eden. In the center of the garden, he placed two special trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and bad. He showed the lovely garden to the man, Adam. Eat all you like from every tree, except for the tree of the knowledge of good and bad, God told him. If you eat its fruit, you will die. Once Adam was in the garden, it was clear to God that he would be lonely there. God brought all the beasts and the birds to Adam, and he gave him the job of naming them. But by the time he was done, God could see that none of the animals could be a true friend to Adam. So while Adam slept, God made a friend for him. Adam named her Eve. Adam and Eve were naked, but the sun was warm and there was plenty to eat, and they were happy. Soon, though, the snake in the garden started giving Eve ideas. It said to her, "Doesn't that fruit on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil look tasty? Why not try it? It won't kill you, you know." "God said it would," said Eve. "God just doesn't want you to eat from that tree because then you would know the difference between good and evil, right and wrong," the snake hissed. "Only God knows that. He wants to keep it to himself." The fruit did look tempting. Eve reached up and took a piece. She hesitated only a moment before biting in. Then Adam took a bite too. It was as if their eyes had been closed before and now they were suddenly open. "You're naked," cried Adam. "You're naked too," said Eve. Quickly, they covered themselves with fig leaves. When God came to the garden, Adam and Eve hid from him for the first time ever. God knew what had happened right away. "You disobeyed me," he said. Then he thought, if Adam and Eve ate the fruit from the tree of life, they would never die. What could he do? He was angry, but he still loved his children, so he gave them clothes to protect them from the cold world outside, and then he cast them out of the garden forever. I share these offering words from Kayla Parker. We know that our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this and commit together to ensure the funds we gather collectively do a greater good for ourselves and our world than they could have done alone. May there be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this congregation. May we give in love and in hope. The offering will now joyfully and gratefully be received.
beginning of the beginning, God created all that is and all that was and all that ever shall be. God made morning, noon, night, dusk, dawn, and all the times in between. God made the skies and the earth and the water and the mountains and the ice caps and every atom of everything. God made every plant, vegetable, and flower and weed and every animal. Fish, fowl, and the penguin and the platypus, who were a little bit of both. And God looked around and saw not this and that, not dark and light, but the all of everything. And God said, oh yes, this is good. On the sixth day, God said, let us make people in our image. Then they can carefully tend the earth and its creatures and help them prosper. So God created humans in God's own image. The people were every age and every height and every shape and had every color of eye and hair and every beautiful shade of brown skin, and they were like God, all genders and none. On the seventh day, God was finished with the work, and so God rested and told the people to rest too. Creation is hard work. God planted a garden called Eden, a place of pleasure where God put the first person. In the garden, God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground. The trees were beautiful and produced food for the person to eat. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God said to the first person, please care for this garden, but do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or you will die. And for a while, the first person wandered happily, touching every tree and eating of all the fruit, except for the tree of knowledge. But the person was lonely. So God created all the creatures of the earth. And the person had fun for a while, naming them all. Giraffe and kangaroo took days of thought. But still, the person was lonely. So God said, look inside yourself and see all the complexity that is me. That complexity is in you too. The first person realized that all the potential people were there within. And with that knowledge, the second person came out of the side of the first person, and they held hands and walked together. In the garden with the people lived a wise serpent. And that serpent said to the people, did God really say you can't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? The people said, yep, that's what God said. God said we'd die. Huh, said the serpent. I know God's like God, but that's wrong. You definitely won't die. What'll happen is you'll know all about good and evil and how nothing in this world is ever that simple. The people looked at each other, wondering why God wouldn't want them to know such a thing. Since they had ever only known good, they never had a chance at understanding. They decided to try that fruit, and they bit into its sweet, sour, tangy, rich, juicy loveliness. And suddenly, the world broke out into all the fullness of everything before their eyes. And God came to the garden and saw the people with juice all over their sticky fingers. You ate the fruit, said God. And the people understood. They had choices. They could lie. They could hide. They could fear. They could blame one another. Every possibility opened before them, and it was good. And it was a little overwhelming, to be honest. Finally, they decided that truth was the best choice. Yes, said the people, we ate the fruit, and now we understand that knowledge of good and evil and all the complexities in between is really hard, and our lives will never be simple from now on. And they saw for the first time that they were different from one another. So one named themselves Adam, which means earth, and the other named themselves Eve, which means life, so that from then on, they would each have their own story. With the opening of their eyes and minds, they realized they could never be fulfilled in the garden. They went through the gates where they could make their own decisions and find their own paths. And though God grieved a little bit, God was also pretty proud. Thank you.
So this morning, we heard a bunch of different versions of the story of Adam and Eve. We started with a good old teacher trick of asking you to activate your prior knowledge, and you did. You told the story, and in that way, we activated the oral tradition of telling stories. Then we heard a version, Elizabeth told the version of the story of Adam and Eve from a children's Bible. The story as it was recorded. And then we heard the same story from a pretty different perspective, one that was gender inclusive and was beautiful, that Lauren wrote. Thank you for writing that, which presented us with a different perspective. The truth is, there are many stories that we could have chosen for you to tell today and for us to tell in different versions, but we wanted to select a story that everybody might know a little something of. And I wonder, what did you feel as you heard others tell the story when we were asking you, what do you remember? Were you checking their version of it with what you knew? And what did you feel then as you heard the version from the Bible? Were you pleased that you had remembered certain elements of it? Did you roll your eyes at parts that you had heard too often? Did you hear new things in it? And then as you heard Lauren's version, how did that make you feel? Did you mourn the loss of a phrase or an image from the old version? Did it expand how you might encounter that story? With any story, we have to ask, what do we know about the authors of that story? What kind of people were they? How did they choose the words that they used? What was the purpose of getting a story written down? Anyway, chances are good this story was told for a very long time before anyone chose to write it down. How did it get solidified in this form? And with the three versions that we had in front of us today, the tale we remember, the tale others have told, and the story that they could have told, the story that is really within the story that we heard. How do we choose which story we grab onto? Which story is then true? The truth is, there are many truths here, many textures, many camera angles. I don't truly know how we could get an accurate picture of this story, even if we ourselves were Adam or Eve or God or the serpent or the tree or any of the other characters in that story. Would that story that we told still be true? or would we just be telling it from our perspective? Human beings are beautiful storytelling creatures. I said that already. We are meaning makers, and we each come to a situation with our own different experiences, which means that when we write the story or when we tell the story, it can be challenging when we hear a story from a different perspective, especially if that story is one that we have told so frequently that we do not question it, or the story becomes one that we tell about ourselves. Perhaps the more interesting questions then, after you've heard a story, are questions like, what are you wondering more about? How are you more curious? How will your life be different once you have heard this story? What are you inspired to do differently? Or what does this story affirm for you? With the different version of the story that Lauren wrote, we can explore two additional very interesting questions. What harm has been done? Or not just two, a few. What harm has been done because the first story was the only story that had been told for so long? What harm is done when we reject that first story completely? What healing occurs when a second story gets written? I find that even with stories that I disagree with almost completely, I find that I can still have a little bit of empathy. Even in the stories that I struggle to understand, I find that I can still allow myself to be turned from bewilderment into wonder. Do you remember last fall I told a story about a man who was driving around a campground in a golf cart? And on the back of his golf cart, he had this huge flag proclaiming his allegiance to a certain presidential candidate. And how for the entire time, I did not want to talk to him at all. I wanted to stay as far away from him as possible. But then at one point, he kind of cut me off as I was walking back from the pool, and we had about a 20-minute conversation where I learned about how lonely he was, how he had bought this golf cart so he could drive his wife around the campground, and how he was grieving after his wife had died. I wrote a story about him that I'm not proud of. Then I heard him tell some of his story, and I got a little bit more of a complete picture of who he was. We likely would not agree on many things at all, I acknowledge that. But at least I could empathize with him. I've lost someone and done strange things, and he was grieving in his own way then. Now, this time of the year for many of our siblings of different faith traditions is a very rich time. The Jewish faith observing Passover, which commemorates the liberation of the Israelites from Egyptian slavery. The festival of Palm Sunday, remembering Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem, which we know spells certain doom. And Ramadan, a month of strict fasting. Each one of these stories we encounter, and if we ask these good questions about how we are changed after we have heard them, then perhaps that's how we encounter those stories best. My friends gathered here, I wonder what happens when you pause and look at things from a different way. That's what we've been doing all day this morning. I hope that we have turned you towards wonder this morning. When we got to the spoken affirmation, and even before, Dean was ready to go with the sung affirmation, even though we had all discussed it, and I was like, yeah, that sounds right. And then I said, wait, no, that's not where we were going to go. We were all turned around. And then when we got to the spoken affirmation, we had one side say one set of words and the other side say the other. And even then, I just wanted to plow on through and read all of the words. But when we had one side stop and listen, perhaps that's one way that we turn towards wonder. How often do we do things because we are on autopilot? Now, very soon we will sing the words of the sung affirmation, but we're going to sing the words to the tune of the Tallis Canon, which you have actually been hearing throughout the service today. It's the same meter, don't worry, we tested it out. It works just fine. You've likely sung these words hundreds of times. You probably sing them anyways with ease. You don't even need to look down at the sheet of paper. But this morning we're going to sing, as I said, to a different tune, which Dean will play once and then we'll all sing. You will likely struggle a little bit, and that's okay. Because I hope this gives you a chance to really think about the words that you are singing. So let's rise in body or spirit to sing this tune and these words. The tune is 372. 372, if you need to read that. Let us listen and then sing. Come back next week. We'll only sing it the way that you know it next week. I close our time together with these words written by the Reverend Teresa Ninan Soto. And they write this: I confess that I have skipped to the back of the book. I really wanted to know what or who or how the story went. I told myself that if I still wanted to read the rest, then it must be good. But that only works for paperback books. Or books on Kindle, I suppose. Life is a little less linear. And still wanting to know how the journey will go, I am willing to dance with the suspense. What will become of a failure? What can be built with an honest mistake? Keep paying attention. Keep dreaming and keep supposing that more is possible. We don't yet know the ending, and if you are tired, then it must be time to rest. Staying curious is like a muscle. We flex, reaching for what we don't yet know, and relax, leaving space for what is yet to come. Go in peace.